I was standing there in my red dress holding a silver tray like some common servant, when the woman who'd been torturing me all evening sneered, "Know your place, darling." The other wealthy guests laughed as champagne dripped from my trembling hands. Then the mansion doors burst open, and my husband walked in, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's cars. The woman's face went white as snow. If you've ever been humiliated by people who thought they were better than you, this story will give you the revenge you've been craving. Hit subscribe right now because what happens next will make your jaw drop. Trust me, you'll want to see how these bullies get destroyed. My name is Jacqueline, and I want to tell you about the night that changed everything. It was supposed to be a celebration, my sister Anna's engagement party. I should have been happy, excited, dancing with family. Instead, I spent the evening being treated like hired help by people who thought they owned the world. It started that morning when I was getting ready. I had exactly one nice dress in my closet, a simple red gown I'd bought on sale 2 years ago. Nothing fancy, nothing designer, just something that made me feel beautiful when I looked in the mirror. As I put it on, my husband Ryan kissed my forehead and said, "You look stunning, sweetheart. I wish I could come with you." Ryan couldn't attend because of what he called a work emergency. He was always having those lately. As a freelance consultant, his schedule was unpredictable. I understood, even though part of me wished he'd be there for support. Anna had specifically asked me not to embarrass her in front of her new rich in-laws, and I was already nervous about fitting in. "Just promise me you'll stay strong," Ryan said, his hands gentle on my shoulders. "Don't let anyone make you feel small. You're worth more than all of them combined." I laughed softly. "Easy for you to say. You don't have to face the Stone family tonight." The Stones. Anna's fiancé Brad came from old money, the kind of family that measured your worth by your bank account and judged your character by your zip code. I'd only met them once before, and it hadn't gone well. But this was Anna's night, and I was determined to be supportive. When I arrived at the Stone mansion, my hands were already shaking. The place was enormous, all marble columns and crystal chandeliers, with perfectly manicured gardens that probably cost more to maintain than my yearly salary. Valets were parking luxury cars, while guests in designer gowns glided up the front steps like they owned the world. I walked through those golden doors, feeling like I was entering enemy territory. The first person I saw was Mrs. Patricia Stone herself, Anna's future mother-in-law. She was holding court near the champagne fountain, wearing diamonds that caught the light like tiny stars. When she saw me, her smile faltered just enough for me to notice. "Jacqueline," she said, my name rolling off her tongue like something distasteful. "How nice to see you again." Standing beside Patricia were her 2 closest friends, Carmen Rodriguez and Sophie Williams. I recognized them from society pages, the kind of women who attended charity galas for the photo opportunities and treated their housekeepers like furniture. "This must be Anna's sister," Carmen said, looking me up and down with barely concealed disdain. Her eyes lingered on my red dress, and I watched her lips purse slightly. "How quaint." Before I could respond, Anna appeared at my side. My little sister looked absolutely radiant in her engagement gown, but when she saw me, something flickered across her face. Embarrassment? Shame? I couldn't quite read it. "Everyone, this is my sister Jacqueline," she said quietly, and I noticed she didn't use words like beloved or wonderful the way she usually did when introducing me. "Charming," Sophie said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Anna, darling, you didn't mention your sister would be helping with the service tonight." "Service?" I asked, confused. Patricia stepped forward, her voice taking on a commanding tone. "Well, since you're here and dressed so practically, you can help pass drinks. The servers are overwhelmed and frankly, you'd blend right in." My heart started pounding. "I'm sorry, but I'm a guest. I'm here for my sister's engagement." The 3 women exchanged looks, the kind of silent communication that wealthy women have perfected over generations. Carmen actually laughed, a tinkling sound that made my skin crawl. "Look at that dress," she said to Sophie, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. She clearly can't afford to be here as a proper guest. This is probably the kindest thing we could do, give her some purpose. I looked at Anna desperately, waiting for her to defend me, to tell them they were out of line. Instead, my sister looked at the floor and said nothing. That silence cut deeper than any insult ever could. I don't think, I started to say, but Patricia was already signaling to a server. Bring me an apron, she called out. Then, turning back to me with a smile that was pure poison, she said, You look much more natural this way, dear. The next thing I knew, they were tying a white apron around my waist over my red dress. Guests were starting to stare and whisper. I caught fragments of their conversations. Who is she? Why is Anna's sister serving drinks? How embarrassing for the family. But the worst part was Anna's fiancé Brad joining the group, looking at me like I was something unpleasant he'd stepped in. Anna told me her sister was the unsuccessful one in the family, he said with a cruel smile. I guess we're seeing that firsthand. Anna finally spoke, and what she said broke my heart into pieces. She's always been like this, never quite able to keep up with the rest of us. Those words hit me like physical blows. My own sister, the person I'd protected and supported through every difficulty in her life, was throwing me to these wolves to save her own reputation. For the next hour, I walked through that party carrying trays of champagne and canapes while wearing my beautiful red dress and a servant's apron. Guests treated me like I was invisible, reaching across me for drinks without saying thank you, spilling things and expecting me to clean up. The worst part was watching Anna laugh and dance with Brad while pretending I didn't exist. But Patricia wasn't done with me yet. As the evening wore on, her treatment became increasingly sadistic. She made me refill the same champagne glass 5 times because it wasn't full enough. She had me rearrange the entire appetizer table because one tiny garnish was out of place. When I accidentally bumped into a guest and spilled a drop of wine, she made me get on my hands and knees to clean the marble floor while everyone watched. This is what happens when people don't know their place, Patricia announced to the gathering crowd. Some lessons have to be learned publicly. Carmen was recording everything on her phone, laughing as she filmed my humiliation. This is absolutely hilarious, she said to Sophie. I can't wait to show this to the girls at the country club. The breaking point came when Patricia called for everyone's attention. The entire party, maybe 200 guests, turned to look at us as she put her arm around my shoulders in a mockery of affection. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced, her voice carrying across the marble hall, I'd like you to meet Anna's sister Jacqueline, who's volunteered to serve us all tonight. Jacqueline, would you like to tell everyone why you're here? My throat felt like sandpaper. I could see Anna watching from across the room, and for just a moment, I hoped she would step forward and end this nightmare. Instead, she looked away. I started, my voice barely above a whisper. Louder, dear, Patricia commanded. Tell everyone what your role is tonight. The words felt like broken glass coming out of my mouth. I'm here to serve. And who are you serving? She prompted, her smile widening. I wanted to run. I wanted to disappear. But there were 200 pairs of eyes on me, and I knew that walking away would only make things worse for Anna. So I said the words that Patricia wanted to hear. I'm serving the Mistress. The crowd murmured its approval, and I felt something inside me die. Patricia made me bow, actually bow, while the guests applauded like this was all some grand entertainment. Carmen's phone was still recording every second of my degradation. Perfect, Patricia said, patting my head like I was a pet. Now be a dear and clean up that spill by the piano, your dripping wine all over my Persian rug. I looked down and realized my hands were shaking so badly that champagne was sloshing over the rim of my tray. My beautiful red dress now had stains down the front, and the white apron was twisted and dirty. I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience, watching this horrible scene happen to someone else. As I knelt by the piano, scrubbing wine stains out of a rug that probably cost more than my car, Sophie leaned down and whispered, "Where's your husband tonight? Too embarrassed to show his face at a real party." That's when they started mocking Ryan. Carmen laughed and said he was probably another broke loser who couldn't afford a decent suit. Sophie suggested he was hiding at home because he knew he didn't belong among quality people. Even some of the guests joined in, making jokes about my imaginary husband, who was too ashamed to meet his wife's successful family. I wanted to defend him, to tell them that Ryan was worth 10 of any of them, but the words wouldn't come. I was broken, defeated, humiliated beyond anything I'd ever experienced. My own sister had betrayed me, my in-laws-to-be had destroyed my dignity, and now they were attacking the one person in the world who truly loved me. That's when I heard the sound that changed everything. The mansion's golden doors didn't just open, they burst open like something out of a movie. The massive oak panels swung wide with such force that they slammed against the marble walls, and the sound echoed through the entire hall like thunder. Every conversation stopped. Every champagne glass froze halfway to its owner's lips. 200 heads turned toward the entrance as footsteps, confident, measured, expensive footsteps, clicked across the marble floor. And then I saw him. Ryan walked into that mansion like he owned it, which, as I would soon learn, wasn't far from the truth. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him like it was crafted by angels, midnight black with sharp lines that emphasized his broad shoulders and tall frame. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine, and his hair was perfectly styled. Behind him walked 2 men in dark suits who were clearly security, and behind them, a woman in a business suit carrying a briefcase. But it wasn't just his appearance that commanded attention. It was the way he moved, the way he held himself, the unmistakable aura of power that surrounded him like an invisible force field. This wasn't the Ryan who kissed me goodbye that morning in our modest apartment. This was someone else entirely, someone who clearly belonged in rooms like this. The crowd parted before him like he was Moses and they were the Red Sea. I watched faces change as recognition dawned, first confusion, then shock, then something approaching terror. Carmen dropped her phone. Sophie's champagne glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the marble floor. And Patricia? Patricia went pale as death. "That's Ryan Matthews," I heard someone whisper in awe. "The tech billionaire?" someone else responded. "He's worth $4.7 billion. He owns half the buildings in the city. What's he doing here?" Ryan's eyes swept the room until they found me, still kneeling on the floor with a cleaning rag in my hands and an apron tied around my stained red dress. The look on his face was something I'd never seen before, cold fury mixed with protective love. When he spoke, his voice carried across the silent hall like a judge delivering a verdict. "Nobody," he said, each word sharp as a blade, "humiliates my wife." The silence that followed was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop in that massive room. Patricia looked like she was about to faint. Carmen was frantically trying to delete the video from her phone. Sophie had gone so pale I thought she might collapse. But Anna's face told a different story. As Ryan walked toward me, I saw something in my sister's expression that made my blood run cold. She wasn't shocked. She wasn't confused. She looked guilty. Ryan reached down and gently removed the apron from my waist, his movements careful and tender despite the storm I could see brewing in his eyes. He helped me to my feet, and as he did, he never took his gaze off Patricia. "Ryan Matthews," Patricia stammered, trying to recover her composure. What an unexpected surprise. We had no idea you were connected to the woman you've been torturing all evening," Ryan finished coldly. "No, I imagine you didn't." That's when Anna stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "Ryan, I can explain." "Can you?" His voice was like ice. "Can you explain why you let these people humiliate your own sister? Can you explain why you stood by and watched them force her to serve them like a slave?" The truth came spilling out then, and it was worse than I could have imagined. Anna had known all along about Ryan's wealth. She'd known when she invited me to the party, known when she asked me not to embarrass her, known when she stood silent as Patricia destroyed my dignity. "I asked them to test how people would treat you," Anna sobbed. I wanted to see if they would accept you for who you are, without knowing about Ryan's money. I thought if they could be kind to you when they thought you were nobody, then maybe they were good people. Instead, Ryan said, his voice deadly quiet, you discovered exactly what kind of monsters they really are. And instead of protecting your sister, you fed her to them. Patricia finally found her voice, though it was shaking badly. Mr. Matthews, please, we had no idea. If we had known who she was, we never would have— Would have what? Ryan cut her off. Treated her with basic human decency? The fact that you think her worth depends on my bank account tells me everything I need to know about your character. He turned to address the entire room, his voice carrying easily to every corner of the hall. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet my wife, Jacqueline Matthews. She's the CEO of the Matthews Foundation, which controls $4 billion in charitable giving. She decides which families receive help, which organizations get funding, and which causes deserve support. The crowd was hanging on every word now, but Ryan wasn't finished. She's also the kindest, most generous person I've ever known. She volunteers at homeless shelters, reads to children at the hospital, and gives away half of everything we earn to people who need it more than we do. She's worth more than everyone in this room combined, and not because of money. Patricia was now visibly trembling. Mr. Matthews, please, I'm sure we can work something out. Your wife is obviously a wonderful woman and we— You're right, Ryan said calmly. She is wonderful. Which is why I've decided to withdraw all Matthews Industries investments from Stone Development. That includes the $50 million commercial project we were funding, the downtown renovation contract, and the tech startup Brad was hoping we'd back. Brad's face went white. You can't do that. My family's company depends on— Your family's company just learned a very expensive lesson about treating people with respect, Ryan replied. Then he turned to Carmen and Sophie. As for you ladies, I believe you recorded my wife's humiliation. I hope you enjoyed making that video, because my legal team will be very interested in discussing it with you. Filming someone without consent for the purpose of public humiliation falls under several harassment statutes. Carmen was frantically deleting files from her phone, but Ryan's assistant had already stepped forward. We've retrieved the video from cloud storage, she said calmly, along with several other recordings from tonight. The security team that had entered with Ryan now moved through the crowd, and I realized they weren't just bodyguards, they were also gathering evidence. They had cameras, recording devices, witness statements. Ryan had come prepared for war. The Matthews Foundation will also be reviewing its donor list, Ryan continued. Any organization that Patricia Stone is involved with will be losing our support immediately. Carmen, I believe your husband's law firm handles some of our contracts? Not anymore. And Sophie, your family's investment group was hoping for backing on that new resort project? Consider your application denied. The 3 women who had tormented me all evening were now facing financial ruin, and they knew it. Patricia fell to her knees, the same position she had forced me into earlier. Please, she begged. I'll do anything. I'll apologize publicly, I'll make donations, You'll learn what it feels like to be powerless, Ryan said simply. Then he turned to the security team. Please escort these 3 women from the premises. They're no longer welcome here. As Patricia, Carmen, and Sophie were led away, Patricia still begging, Carmen crying, Sophie too shocked to speak, Ryan turned his attention to Anna. My sister was sobbing openly now. Her perfect engagement party turned into a nightmare. Anna, Ryan said, his voice soft but firm. You had a choice tonight. You could have protected your sister, or you could have protected your reputation. You chose reputation. That choice has consequences. What does that mean? Brad demanded, stepping protectively in front of Anna. Ryan smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. It means that I've just become very interested in Stone Development's business practices. My investigative team will be looking into your construction permits, your safety records, your tax filings. I have a feeling we're going to find some very interesting irregularities. You can't destroy our lives because of one party, Brad shouted. Watch me, Ryan replied calmly. Then he took my hand and led me toward the exit. As we walked through that crowd of stunned guests, I heard whispers following us. But these weren't the cruel whispers from earlier. These were awed, fearful whispers about power and money and consequences. People stepped aside to let us pass, their eyes wide with shock and newfound respect. Just before we reached the doors, Ryan stopped and turned back to address the room one final time. "Let this be a lesson to all of you," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the marble hall. "The next time you think about humiliating someone because you think they're beneath you, remember tonight. Remember that you never know who you're really talking to. And remember that there are people in this world who have the power to hold you accountable for your cruelty." As we stepped out into the night air, I finally found my voice. "Ryan," I whispered, "why didn't you tell me?" He stopped walking and turned to face me, his hands gentle on my shoulders. "Because I wanted to know that you loved me for me, not for what I could buy you. I wanted to be sure that wealth wouldn't change your beautiful heart, and I wanted to see how people treated you when they thought you were nobody special." "So this was all a test?" "No," he said firmly. "Anna's idea was a test. My keeping my identity secret was protection. I never wanted you to go through what happened tonight. But when Anna told me her plan, I decided to let it play out so you could see what kind of people they really were." I looked back at the mansion, where the party was presumably continuing, though I doubted anyone would be celebrating much after what they'd witnessed. "What happens now?" I asked. Ryan smiled, and this time it was the warm, loving smile I'd fallen in love with. "Now you decide. Do you want to go home to our apartment and pretend this never happened, or do you want to see the penthouse I've been hiding from you?" I laughed, despite everything, the first real laugh I'd had all evening. "You have a penthouse?" "I have several," he said, grinning. "But there's one I've been decorating just for you. I was waiting for the right time to show you our real home." As we walked toward a car that was definitely not the modest sedan Ryan usually drove, this one looked like it belonged in a museum, I thought about the evening's events. Patricia, Carmen, and Sophie had learned that their cruelty had consequences. Anna had discovered that betraying family comes with a price, and I had found out that the man I married was full of surprises. But more than that, I had learned something important about myself. Even when stripped of dignity, even when humiliated and broken down, I hadn't lost who I was. I hadn't become cruel or bitter. I had stayed kind, stayed true to my values, even when it would have been easier to fight back. "Ryan," I said as he opened the car door for me, "next time you want to test someone's character, maybe just ask them some tough questions over dinner." He laughed, the sound rich and warm in the cool night air. "Deal. Though I have to say, seeing you maintain your grace under that kind of pressure just made me fall in love with you all over again." As we drove away from the stone mansion, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the car window. My red dress was stained, my hair was disheveled, and I had tear marks on my cheeks. But my eyes looked different. Stronger, like I'd survived something that would have broken a weaker person. And maybe that's the real lesson of this story. It's not about the money or the power or the revenge, though I won't lie and say watching Patricia get her comeuppance wasn't satisfying. It's about knowing who you are when everything is stripped away. It's about treating people with kindness even when they don't deserve it, and it's about the fact that you never really know who you're talking to or what battles they've fought to get where they are. 3 months later, I received a handwritten letter from Patricia Stone. She was working as a receptionist at a small accounting firm, having lost her mansion, her social status, and most of her friends. In the letter, she thanked me for not pressing charges and apologized for her behavior. She said that losing everything had taught her what it felt like to be powerless, and she finally understood why her treatment of me had been so wrong. I wrote her back. I told her that everyone deserves a second chance, and that I hoped she had learned something valuable from the experience. I didn't mention that Ryan's foundation had anonymously paid for her son's college tuition when the Stone family finances collapsed. Some kindnesses are better left secret. As for Anna, she and Brad broke up 2 weeks after the party. Turns out that when the Stone family lost their money, Brad lost interest in marrying into our family. Anna called me crying, asking for forgiveness, saying she finally understood what true loyalty meant. We're working on rebuilding our relationship, but trust, once broken, takes time to repair. And me? I'm still wearing that red dress sometimes, but now it hangs in a closet the size of my old apartment. Ryan was right. The penthouse is beautiful, but my favorite part isn't the marble floors or the crystal chandeliers or the view of the city skyline. It's the small reading nook by the window where Ryan and I sit together in the evenings, talking about our days and planning which charities the foundation will support next. Because at the end of the day, money doesn't define who you are. Character does, and character is what remains when everything else is stripped away. That night at the Stone Mansion, I learned that I have more character than I ever knew, and I learned that the man I married saw that character long before I did. Sometimes the most important lessons come wrapped in the most painful experiences, but if you're strong enough to survive them, you'll discover things about yourself that you never knew were there. Patricia thought she could crush my spirit, but she had no idea who she was messing with. If this story of ultimate revenge gave you chills, smash that like button and share it with anyone who's ever been underestimated. Subscribe for more stories where bullies get exactly what they deserve. What would you have done to Patricia? Let me know in the comments. Remember, you never know who you're really talking to.